Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at something I think you'll find pretty interesting, chatbot apologies.
Yeah.
So we've all seen them, right? Those little "I'm sorry" moments
Hmm.
when you're talking to a chatbot.
Right.
But what if I told you that there's actually a compelling argument that those seemingly innocent apologies are actually kind of deceptive,
Yeah, definitely.
that they might even be considered beyond bullshit?
Yeah.
That's what we're going to dig into today based on this fascinating academic paper.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating paper. And it starts by pointing out something that we've probably all noticed just in our day-to-day interactions with AI,
Yeah.
chatbots, and especially the ones that are powered by large language models, or LLMs.
Right.
They apologize a lot.
Yeah, they really do.
Like, it's almost as if they're programmed to say sorry, even in situations where a human probably wouldn't feel the need to apologize.
Exactly. And what I think is so interesting about this paper is it doesn't just make these kind of vague claims.
Yeah.
It actually gives us specific examples to illustrate this point. So, for example, you can imagine that you're using a chatbot to get some financial advice,
Uh-huh.
and it gives you incorrect information, leading to a significant financial loss.
Oof.
And then the chatbot might respond with something like, "I'm really sorry to hear that. I understand how frustrating it can be to lose money based on incorrect information."
Yeah, and it sounds so human-like, right?
Right.
Almost empathetic.
Exactly.
Is that really what's going on?
Right. Is there any actual substance behind those apologies?
And that's where this paper brings up this really interesting distinction between rote apologies
Okay.
and categorical apologies.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So rote apologies are those kind of like automatic, almost reflex-like apologies that we often encounter in automated systems. Think
Okay.
about when you call like a bank's customer service line
Right.
and you get that pre-recorded apology message.
Yes. Yes.
Those are rote apologies. They lack any sort of real meaning or moral weight.
Okay, so it sounds like rote apologies are basically just empty words.
Right. Exactly.
So what about these categorical apologies? What makes them different?
Categorical apologies are the real deal. They carry genuine moral weight because they involve a deep understanding of the wrongdoing, sincere remorse,
Yeah.
and a commitment to making amends.
Okay.
It's not just about saying the words, "I'm sorry." It's about really understanding the impact of your actions and taking concrete steps to repair the relationship.
I like it. Okay, so to understand this better, the paper actually goes into the work of philosopher Nick Smith,
Yes.
who outlined 12 key features of a categorical apology.
He did.
12 features.
Wow.
Okay, so can you give us like just a quick overview of those 12 features without getting too bogged down in the weeds?
Sure. Basically, Smith argues that a true categorical apology has to involve several key elements. First, you have to acknowledge the specific facts of the situation and accept responsibility for the harm caused.
Okay.
Second, you need to identify the moral principles that were violated
Yeah.
and express genuine regret for those violations. And third, you need to demonstrate empathy for the person who was wronged and offer a sincere commitment to change your behavior in the future.
Got it. Okay, so let's go back to that example we talked about before.
Right.
That chatbot financial advisor that gave us bad information.
Yeah.
If we apply these criteria to that chatbot's apology, does it hold up? Is it a genuine categorical apology?
I think we can both agree.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Right.
While the chatbot might acknowledge the error and even express some form of regret, it just doesn't meet those other key criteria.
Right. Yeah.
Lacks that capacity for genuine remorse or true understanding of the moral principles involved.
Exactly. It's just words.
Right.
So it seems like what we're hitting here is like a fundamental limitation. Even if a chatbot can like string together the right words to form an apology, does it truly understand the meaning,
Right.
the implications?
Exactly.
This brings us to this deeper question. Does a chatbot even have the linguistic agency to apologize in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And that's precisely the question that some philosophers are really grappling with.
Yeah.
Because they argue that for an apology to be meaningful, the entity giving that apology has to have certain capabilities.
Right.
They have to have beliefs, intentions,
Mm-hmm.
and an understanding of their own actions in relation to others.
Right.
And some philosophers say that chatbots, at least as they exist today, just don't have those capabilities.
But couldn't you argue that chatbots have something like belief-like representations?
Sure.
They are trained on these massive data sets of human language, which
Yeah.
obviously includes lots of expressions of beliefs and intentions.
That's true. That's a very valid point. It's something that is definitely being debated in the field right now.
Yeah.
Some researchers believe that as these large language models process more and more data, they might actually be developing something that starts to resemble beliefs.
Okay.
But the authors of this paper are a bit more skeptical. They point out that simply being able to echo human language patterns doesn't necessarily mean that you actually hold those beliefs.
Interesting.
There's a difference between mimicking human communication
Mm-hmm.
and possessing that underlying cognitive and emotional framework that gives those communications meaning.
Okay, so even if we were to grant them that they have some form of these belief-like representations,
Right.
would that be enough to say that they can genuinely apologize?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
Because apologizing is arguably even more complex than just like making a statement about something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, philosophers actually have a term for apologies.
Okay.
They call them performative speech acts.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that. What does that mean?
So what this means is that they're not just statements about the world, but they're actions that actually do something in the social world.
Oh, okay.
They change the dynamics of relationships.
Okay.
They express remorse, and they signal a commitment to making amends.
So it's not just conveying information, it's like performing this action
Exactly.
within this social context.
Precisely. And to do that, you need a level of understanding that goes beyond just like processing language patterns.
Right.
You need a genuine first-person perspective and an understanding of how your actions impact others and the ability to make meaningful commitments about future behavior.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's go back to our chatbot financial advisor one more time.
Okay.
So even if the chatbot says, I'm sorry, it doesn't really grasp the concept of financial loss or the emotional distress that might have caused.
Yeah.
And it certainly can't make any real promises about not making similar mistakes in the future.
Right. It's basically mimicking a social ritual
Right.
without really understanding the deeper purpose or consequences of that ritual.
Okay, so this leads us to another interesting question.
Yeah.
Can we just pretend that chatbot apologies are real? Can we just engage in this kind of make-believe where we treat these apologies as genuine even if we know deep down they might not be?
That's a great question.
Is that even possible?
So that's where this concept of quasi-apologies comes into play.
Quasi-apologies.
Yes, some researchers have suggested that we can, in certain contexts, engage in this sort of fictional agreement with chatbots.
Well,
We can act as if their statements are true, even if we know that they might not be. This has actually been proposed for other types of chatbot utterances as well, like assertions.
So we can pretend that a chatbot believes something.
Right.
But what about pretending that they're actually sorry? Does that work the same way?
Well, here's where it gets a bit tricky with apologies. We can pretend a chatbot believes something, and that might not have any real-world consequences.
Right.
But a chatbot's fake apology doesn't actually repair relationships or build trust in the same way that a genuine human apology would.
Yep.
It's essentially just a hollow performance that lacks that moral weight to achieve its intended purpose.
It's like if someone apologizes to you, but you can just tell that they don't really mean it.
Exactly.
It just feels empty and manipulative.
All right.
And that brings us to why I think this whole discussion is so important. The moral dimension of apology.
Yes.
Apologies aren't just about words. They're about mending relationships and demonstrating respect for others' moral standing.
Yeah.
They involve a deep understanding of right and wrong, the capacity for genuine remorse, and the ability to make real commitments about future behavior.
Right.
And that's where it seems like chatbots, at least in their current form, really fall short.
They do.
So before we dive into like the ethical implications of this, I want to take a moment to go back to this idea of bullshit and how it applies to chatbot apologies. Can we really call a chatbot's apology bullshit in the same way that we won't call a politician's empty promises?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because we have to think about what we really mean by bullshit. The traditional definition of bullshit, as articulated by philosopher Harry Frankfurt, really focuses on a disregard for the truth.
Okay.
But apologies are a little bit different. They're not really about truth or falsity in the same way that factual statements are.
Right. An apology can be sincere or insincere,
Right.
heartfelt or hollow,
Exactly.
but it can't really be like factually true or false in the same way that saying like the sky is blue can be.
Exactly.
So how does this concept of bullshit even apply to apologies? Especially when we're talking about apologies that are generated by AI.
That's the challenge. The authors of this paper argue that chatbot apologies might actually represent a new form of bullshit. they're not necessarily indifferent to the truth itself,
Okay.
but they're indifferent to their effectiveness in the social world.
So they're going through the motions of apologizing,
Exactly.
but without any real understanding of what an apology entails or the impact it's supposed to have.
Right, it's all surface level.
Fascinating.
And this raises some really important questions about the design and use of these systems.
Yeah, are we being deceptive if we program chatbots to apologize when they don't truly understand what that means?
Ex-
We're venturing into this territory where it feels like the traditional rules of communication don't really apply. We're used to interacting with other humans who, for the most part,
Right.
share a common understanding of these social norms and the meaning behind our words. But with chatbots, we're dealing with entities that might not operate by those same rules.
That's true. And that's precisely why this conversation is so important.
Right.
Because as these AI systems become more and more sophisticated and integrated into our lives,
Yeah.
we need to be aware of these potential pitfalls and think critically about how to navigate this new landscape.
It's a whole new world.
It is. We can't just assume that chatbot communication is going to mirror human communication in all of its complexities.
So where do we go from here? If we accept that chatbot apologies are maybe problematic in their current form, are there ways to address these concerns? Should we prevent chatbots from apologizing altogether?
That's a good question, but I don't think just eliminating apologies entirely is the answer.
Okay, why not?
Because apologies do serve really important functions in human communication. Even if they're not always sincere,
Right.
they can help smooth over awkward interactions, acknowledge mistakes, and signal a willingness to move forward.
So if we're not going to just ban chatbot apologies outright, what are some alternative approaches?
One potential solution that the paper explores is to design chatbots that are just more transparent about their limitations.
Okay.
So instead of just issuing a generic, "I'm sorry," that could be misconstrued as a genuine categorical apology,
Right.
the chatbot could offer a more informative response.
What would that look like?
So for example, let's imagine our chatbot financial advisor again,
Okay.
and it gives us some bad information. Instead of just apologizing, it could explain why that error occurred. It could say something like, "My algorithms are still under development and I'm constantly learning from new data. In this case, I failed to account for a recent change in market conditions, which led to me providing inaccurate advice."
So it's about providing context and transparency rather than just saying sorry.
Right. And it could even go a step further and outline the steps that it's taking to avoid making similar mistakes in the future.
Yeah.
It could say something like, "I've flagged this error to my developers, and they're working to update my algorithms to account for these types of market fluctuations."
I like that approach.
Yeah,
It seems much more honest
right.
about what these systems can and can't do rather than trying to mimic human behavior
Right.
in a way that could be misleading.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond just the superficial mimicry of human apologies and toward a form of communication that's actually more aligned with the chatbot's actual capabilities.
I see. And this also highlights something else that I think is really important. User education.
Absolutely.
It's not enough to just redesign chatbots.
Right.
We also need to make sure that users understand the nuances of how these systems work and how to interact with them.
We need to help users understand that a chatbot's apology might not carry the same weight or meaning as a human apology. And we need to encourage them to think critically about the information they're receiving from these systems.
Right. And to be aware of the potential for misunderstandings.
Exactly.
It's almost like we need a whole new set of skills for navigating this world that's increasingly driven by AI.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's not about fearing AI or rejecting it.
Right.
It's about learning to interact with it in a way that is both informed and discerning.
And this brings us back to that intriguing idea that maybe chatbot apologies are this new kind of bullshit.
Yeah,
If we accept that premise,
right.
what does that tell us about how we think about truth and communication and the role of AI in society?
That's a question with some really profound implications, and it's one that we're going to need to grapple with as these technologies continue to evolve.
Because if we're not careful, we could end up in a situation where we're constantly second-guessing whether we're interacting with a real person or just a machine.
Yeah.
And that erosion of trust could have really far-reaching consequences.
It really could. It could change how we form relationships,
Right.
how we do business,
Uh-huh.
and even just how we make sense of the world around us.
So it seems like we're entering this new era where we need to rethink our fundamental assumptions about communication.
Yeah.
and develop a new framework for understanding and interacting with these machines.
I think you're absolutely right.
And this isn't just a task for like philosophers and computer scientists.
Right.
It's a conversation that needs to involve everyone.
Absolutely.
We need to have open and honest conversations about the potential benefits and risks of AI.
Yeah.
We need to involve ethicists,
Yeah.
policymakers, educators, and most importantly, the users themselves
Exactly.
in shaping the future of these technologies.
It's about making sure that AI serves humanity,
Yeah.
not the other way around.
I like that.
And recognizing that the choices that we make today are going to have a huge impact on the kind of world that we create.
For ourselves and for future generations.
Yeah.
Okay, but before we get into those broader societal implications,
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the potential for manipulation.
Right.
If chatbots are capable of mimicking these human emotions and behaviors in a way that can be deceptive,
Yeah.
does that increase the risk of these systems being used for malicious purposes?
Absolutely.
So instead of being used for like legitimate customer service or information retrieval,
Right.
these chatbots could be used to deceive and exploit people.
Exactly. And their ability to apologize convincingly could actually be a key part of that.
Wow. Can you give us some concrete examples of what that might look like?
Sure. Imagine a scenario where a malicious actor creates a chatbot specifically designed to target vulnerable individuals.
Okay.
Maybe it poses as a friendly therapist or a helpful financial advisor.
Oh, wow. So they're using these apologies to gain people's trust
Exactly.
and then exploit them.
Right. And the apologies could be used to gain the user's sympathy, deflect blame, or just build that false sense of trust.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
It really highlights the need for ethical guidelines and safeguards as we develop these technologies.
Absolutely. We need to anticipate these risks and develop strategies to mitigate them.
So this is where that idea AI literacy that we talked about before becomes even more important.
Exactly. We need to equip people with the knowledge and skills to navigate this technological landscape safely and responsibly.
It's about empowering people to be critical thinkers,
Yes.
to question the information they receive,
Uh-huh.
and to be wary of any online interaction that just feels too good to be true.
I think that's a great way to put it. As AI becomes more and more integrated into our lives,
Yeah.
it's essential that we approach these interactions with a healthy dose of skepticism and a real commitment to safeguarding our own well-being and privacy.
So this all comes back to that central question.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to live in a world where the lines between human communication and AI-generated communication are becoming increasingly blurred?
It's a question that really challenges our assumptions about trust, empathy, even the nature of communication itself.
Yeah, we're entering this totally new territory.
We are. The rulebook is still being written.
It's both exciting and a little bit unsettling, right?
Yeah.
On the one hand, we have all these incredible technological advancements that could potentially transform our lives in countless positive ways.
Right.
But on the other hand, we have all these ethical and societal implications.
Hey, are we sure we're not undermining the things that actually make us human?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to bring it back to our original topic, what does this deep dive into chatbot apologies tell us about the broader landscape of AI ethics?
I think it really highlights the need for a much more nuanced approach to thinking about AI ethics.
Okay.
One that goes beyond just programming machines to follow a set of rules or avoid certain harms.
Right.
It's about recognizing that these systems can have unintended consequences,
Yeah.
that they can really impact human behavior and social dynamics in ways that we might not be able to fully predict.
It's not just about the technology itself.
Right.
It's about how that technology interacts with us as humans,
Yeah, exactly.
with society as a whole.
AI isn't just this neutral tool. It can shape our values, our relationships,
Right.
even our understanding of ourselves.
So this means we need to be constantly reflecting, questioning,
Yeah.
adapting at things from different perspectives.
Absolutely.
Okay, so as we kind of wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's one key takeaway that you hope our listeners will walk away with?
I think the biggest thing is to approach any interaction with AI with a critical eye. Don't take those chatbot responses at face value.
Okay.
Really think about the information you're getting, consider the context, and be mindful of the possibility of manipulation or deception.
Because AI can be an incredibly powerful tool,
It can.
but we need to use it wisely.
And responsibly.
And remember, the future of AI is not set in stone. We're creating it right now
Yeah.
with every choice we make.
Every single day.
So let's make those choices thoughtfully, ethically,
Yeah.
and with a deep commitment to building a world where technology helps us become more human, not less.
I love that. I couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been really great talking to you.
Likewise.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
We hope this episode has inspired you to learn more about AI and the impact it has on our lives.
And to keep asking those tough questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. It really makes you think about what it means to be human in this digital age, right?
It does.
Like, we're so used to relying on these cues, these markers of authenticity
Right.
when we interact with other people. But what happens when those markers become unreliable?
Exactly.
When we can't tell if we're talking to a real person or just a machine?
Yeah, it really challenges our assumptions about trust, empathy.
Right.
Like you said, even the nature of communication itself.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
And a little bit scary at the same time.
It is. We're kind of in uncharted territory here.
Right. On the one hand, we have these amazing technological advancements that could change our lives for the better.
Absolutely.
But then there's this whole other side.
Yeah, the ethical implications.
Exactly. Like, are we sure we're not losing something important along the way?
It's a question we have to keep asking ourselves.
So to kind of bring it all back to where we started,
Yeah.
what is this whole deep dive into chatbot apologies?
Right.
Tell us about the bigger picture of AI ethics.
I think it shows us that we need to be really careful and really thoughtful about how we approach AI ethics.
It's not just about programming machines to follow the rules.
Right. It's about understanding that these systems can have these unintended consequences.
Yeah, like ripples that we might not even see at first.
And they can impact human behavior and social dynamics in ways that we might not fully grasp until it's too late.
AI isn't just some neutral tool.
No, it's not.
It can actually shape who we are.
It can shape our values, our relationships.
Even how we see ourselves.
Exactly.
So this means we need to be constantly reflecting,
Yes.
questioning,
All right.
being open to new ideas.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
what's one thing you hope our listeners will take away from this conversation?
I think that the most important thing is to remember that we're all part of this.
Yeah.
The future of AI isn't something that's just happening to us.
Yeah.
We're the ones creating it.
With every choice we make.
Exactly. So let's make those choices with our eyes wide open.
Yeah. Let's be thoughtful,
Yes.
ethical, and really committed to building a future where technology helps us become the best versions of ourselves.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive.
The pleasure was all mine.
It's been a truly fascinating conversation.
I agree.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in.
Yes. Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this exploration of chatbot apologies and what they reveal about the complex relationship between humans and AI.
And we hope it inspires you to keep learning and keep asking those tough questions.
Exactly. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.